missed that, if you missed that 5 hours on that one task, were you bad? Was that a bad estimate? No. Because what you really have to have is some sort of statistical experience that says you're always high or you're always low. Then I can say that you're not good at doing estimates. Because if you're always high, then you're being too pessimistic. If you're always low, you're being too optimistic. You're forgetting things that are supposed to be in there. Right? So to say that you have a good estimation process, you can't talk about one task. You can't talk about, even for that matter, 2 or 3 events. If you have a project, a classical managed project, and you have 500 tasks that are trickling on down, and half of them are early and half of them are late, that's darn good estimation. That's just spot on as far as I'm concerned. If they're all early or all late, then you got a problem. Okay? But your boss starts beating you up the minute you go and miss that one task. And that's the wrong thing to do. Right? So I heard some people, when I was talking before this, about the attitude of their organization. And it's not, they don't take a look at one instance and say that one instance is a problem. They start looking at a very long-term trend. And that's really critical. So we get back to the problem of, is it the way that we do the estimate that's wrong? The way we sit down and work to come up with that estimate? Or is it the way the estimates are treated? And it really is a combination of both. As we go through here, I think you're going to start seeing, I hope you're going to see, how that actually works against one another. Okay? So to do this, what we have to manufacture some sort of task that we're all familiar with and we all have experience with. So this is the fun part. Okay? You may think it's not fun, but this is what I consider the fun part. This is where the quarters come into play. Okay? Now, normally I do this in a classroom that has tables in front of you so you can write easy. Okay? What I want you to do, and I don't know if I have enough quarters here, so hopefully some people have some other quarters. I do want my quarters back, by the way.
Are these American quarters?
Yes, they're U.S. quarters. Actually, I have had a $10 bill, Canadian $10 bill in my wallet now for probably 5 years. Okay, I usually don't even carry 10 American dollars in my wallet, but this one $10 bill has been there for a while. So what I want you to do is I want you to pair up, and I want you to flip this quarter 20 times, write down heads or tails, and I want your partner to time you. Then I want you to flip and do just the opposite. So whoever was timing flips the quarters and somebody else. You understand what I'm saying? Whenever you get done, I want you to write, you're going to get a piece of paper here. We're going to do a couple of different estimates. So I want you to take this piece of paper and over on the far left-hand side, okay? I just want you to write those 2 numbers for the 2 of you, okay? And then we're going to key those in so we can actually get an estimate of what the average is. So we know what this number is, so we know how long it takes to do this task. Okay? And then we're going to do some experiments on that and see what happens to that number. Okay? So I take a little bit of time here to hand out the quarters and get some of this paperwork done. If you have some quarters, because I am short, go ahead and do that. And I'll get this going. So there's, actually, you know what? $1 million in 1 quarter. Yeah. Didn't think about that. Okay, because you're going to pair off. So 1, 2, 3.
James.
Okay, so pass it on down. Take a quarter, take a quarter.
20 times.
Quarters. Are you going to team up on this side over here? Those are expensive.
You gotta write it down. Oh, you got a quarter. Wow. Okay, so you need a piece of paper and then. Oh, you get a quarter. Gotta feel rich now. You need a quarter? Okay, you got one? It's a Canadian quarter, probably worth it.
Who is it? It's
Share off the piece and make it a meeting. That is my trusted assistant.
yeah, exactly. What is based on this? I remember reading an article about something having to do with statistical variation and one like a test similar to this. I don't remember all the details, but something in terms of theorizing, like the range of variation is significant. Right. Particularly with something like quarter where it's only over like a 3 period of time. Oh well.
And extend the data set.
Yeah.
Here you go.
Yeah, that'd be super interesting to see what the variation is. Estimates with the actuals.
Yeah.
I didn't think we actually recall the actuals.
Well, from what I've read of the research, and underestimate the amount of time it takes to do something.
I like it.
Very consistent.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so we're done yet? Everybody done?
That stuff you tend to know well, like how long things take.
Yeah.
For things they don't know well.
Gone.
Yeah. It's better to just.
Okay, so we'll go through the next slide slow, because my trusted assistant is keying things in back there, okay? And it does take time to do that, right? Because as you're typing in numbers like times into Microsoft Excel always thinks it's smarter than you. So you can make a typo, it changes it from a time to a decimal number, and then you gotta go fix it again. So it's painful, okay? Thanks, Bill. Okay. So let's talk about this a little bit. What happened to affect, you did something and a task took some length of time. What happened in this process that affected the length of time that it took you to flip the quarters? What? Somebody asked for the watch. That's a good one. That actually is perfectly pertinent.
I'm not very good at flipping coins.
Okay, some people aren't very good at flipping coins. When you flip a coin, you generally don't hear, there's a certain sound you don't hear, okay, which is that sound, right? Because that takes time. You flop, you drop it, it rolls underneath your chair, rolls away from you, you know, things like that. What else? You see anything else?
Well, the interruptions of other people doing, like you're trying to concentrate and then.
Yeah, there's interruptions going on. Did you look at how, I don't know if you had the chance, but did you look at how other people were flipping their quarter, right? Some people flipped the quarter and just made it lay on a piece of paper. Some people flipped the quarter and would catch it and then put it over on their hand, right? And I don't know where that, if you flip a quarter and it comes up this way, why do you flip it over on your hand that way? I've never understood that, you know? Like, you know, it doesn't make it any more random. It's not like you're like in cards where, you know, you cut the decks, they can't see. Never understood that, right? But that all takes time, right? So the way, the technique that we do things changes what those numbers really are, right? So there's dropping, there's other things. So stealing the quarter, there's quite a few times if I have a really dead crowd, okay, I'll go steal a quarter now and then, just to make things a little bit more exciting. Pen's running out of ink, someone wants their, it's very analogous to someone wanting their watch back.
What about the recruiting part? Because you only said flip, and flip can mean a lot of things, because we were joking that it could really just be flipping over the quarter.
Yeah.
You didn't say anything about randomness.
Yeah. So there was nothing about randomness. There was nothing. The instructions weren't super detailed, telling you what actually had to happen. Okay. But I snuck the answer to you just a little bit ago. Is I don't really care if it comes out heads or tails. Once I can collect it, I want the time. Okay. So really, what I was trying to do by building in two functions you had to do was to get some additional randomness in there. Okay. Otherwise, it would have been a really boring experiment. Okay. And we'll see where we go. Now, this is trying to simulate doing something at work. I could have asked you, please write a functional specification. We'll time how long it takes you to do that, but probably wouldn't fit inside of the presentation here. So I had to concoct something that we could get done. You could meet your manager and talk a little bit more and be more involved. How does this translate to work? What types of things at work affect your estimate? Same types of things, right? I heard somebody say, I get interrupted, right? There's that boy or girl next door that thinks you're really cute and they're throwing a paper airplane over the bed all the time. What else happens? There's one really big one that happens all the time. It starts with a B.
Bias.
It's the boss. Your phone rings, the cubicle next door, or your boss. Your boss comes in and says, we do something else tomorrow. I know you're doing this, and I know you want to get it done, okay, but I have something else that you need to do. It only takes a couple of minutes. Trust me. Okay? And away you go. Yes?
I think accidental complexity is something that...
Accidental complexity, yes. There's a whole list. I mean, I throw 3 things up here. Just kind of get your mind moving in that direction. Right? Okay, so the drum roll is my trusted assistant's done, right?
Yep.
Okay, so what was the average time it took for a person to flip this quarter?
Minute 28.
Okay, a minute and 28 seconds. What was the standard? What was the minimum?
33 seconds.
33 seconds, and the maximum was
3 minutes 10.
3 minutes, 10 seconds. Okay? So that kind of gives you, so somebody actually identified who the maximum was. Okay? Doesn't matter, because this is the point of statistics. You have this broad distribution. Right? Okay? So a minute, 28 seconds. I'll tell you, I get to tell you this, I will. Okay? That's 100 seconds. Right? So you guys are probably about 8 seconds slower than most of the other groups that I do. Okay? That is probably because you don't have a table in front of you. Right? I will, I'll make that, because you guys did drop quarters a lot more than other people did, okay? One of the things that people do, and I saw some people doing on pads of paper, flip the quarter and then it just lands. Okay, you do that on a hard table, it bounces around for about 10 seconds. It's very effective, but good.
But it's not 100,
I
it's
think that-
88. It's 88. It's not 100 seconds, it's 88.
How was it? What did you say, a minute? It was a minute what?
Minute 28, right?
Minute 28.
Oh, a minute 28, I'm sorry, I thought you said a minute 38. So I added that to 19 seconds, okay. So, 2 seconds faster. I'm impressed. Well, there's a problem, okay? If it really only took you a minute and a half, basically, to flip the quarter, then why did it really take you 5 minutes to do it, which means that each of you took 2.5 minutes to flip the quarter? So what's the right number? I mean, I timed you guys. I watched whenever the first one came in, and I timed it, and the total time was 6 minutes and 10 seconds, okay? But the general median point was about 5 minutes and 50 seconds. Again, divide that by 2, 3 minutes for a minute and a half task. What took you 3 minutes to do a minute and a half task? She just said it was a minute and a half, right? What? Borrowing the watch, swapping things around, distractions, all this other setup stuff that went on, right? So if I gave you this task and I said, okay, you're going to go do this task, and I want you to do this task every time, and you're going to do it in 90 seconds, would you sign up to do that task? I see a couple people chuckling. Does that mean no?
Can I keep it quarter?
Can you keep the quarter? You're ahead about 3 slides, maybe 4. Okay. What he's saying is, what is the impact of when I miss it? What's the consequence of failure, right? Okay. So if I get to keep the quarter, yeah, geez, I'll do it, because then whenever I look bad for missing it, at least I got 2 bits to claim for fame, right? Isn't that what he's saying? Why wouldn't you want to say that? Why wouldn't you want to use that 90 seconds? Anybody got an idea? I mean, that's whatever's going to happen.
Well, because with the setup, you're bound to go way over. If you're not including setup and all the other associated difficulties that can arise, not just including that particular period of time where you're flipping, then you know.
So if I were to take the setup out and say, I'm just going to time, assume you have everything in place, I'm just going to time it, will you sign up and say, yeah, I'll do that in 90 seconds? It's the consequences. But isn't it kind of how if I'm your boss, I'm the one who's giving you this task, isn't it how I'm going to treat that? If I'm a good boss, I'm going to say, well, 50% of the time you were less, and 50% of the time you were higher, you're right on, I have no problem. But if I'm the type of boss who says, wait a minute, you just took a minute and 50 seconds, you took 2 minutes to do this thing, forget it. You know, I'm you're slow. And I take those individual things and reprimand you for those individual things. Kind of consequence of failure, but it's the attitude that comes back, right? That's important. If I have the wrong attitude as your boss, you're not going to want to sign up for this thing. Okay? So what would you, if you were going to go and estimate this task that you were going to do, now that you've seen that it took the group basically 3 minutes to flip the quarters. Numbers say about a minute and a half. What type of number are you going to give as an estimate? Okay? And I want you to write that in one more square. And then I'll give it back and calculate an outcome for that. So just, I got to do this test. What is it that I'm going to do? We got some really good data. We've got 40 people's worth of data that says it's going to be one time. We've got this kind of this group number that says something else.
One individual or?
Yeah, in that little piece of paper, you know, there's 2 boxes. So make your estimate and then hand it up to me and I'll take it back and do it for you. For you to do, just so it's one. So do the one, the flip 20.
Which, were you talking just the flipping part, or estimating just the flipping, or all the?
Just tell me the number that you want to do it in. That's part of it. That's part of it. How you look at that. Okay. Hold that.
So we look at the historical data and
If you haven't done it, please come back to my trusted assistant back there so we can get those things. Okay, so how does the estimate, we're going to move down to the next step because, we've got to create some numbers and we'll talk about those a little bit. We're going to go and take the next step, and that is, what is it that happens when our estimates are too short? If you make an estimate that is too short, here, gotta write something down before I forget. If you give an estimate that's too short, what do you do? What is the reaction you have? So let's say you took this estimate and you, instead of coming up with 88 seconds, you decided you were going to say approximately 60 seconds, 55 seconds, okay? Then you all of a sudden start finding out that you're in trouble, right? You've estimated too lean. What do?
Take shortcuts.
You take shortcuts.
Take the results.
You what?
Take the results.
Your boss isn't here, right? Okay? You fake the results. Actually, that does happen, right? People take shortcuts. It's the same as faking your results. You don't do the whole thing. What else? There's some positive things you can do. You can get help.
Look for efficiencies.
Look for efficiencies. That's a big one. I mean, the whole bit of dropping quarters and, what if I had a second quarter, right? Then when I drop the quarter, I don't have to worry about dropping the quarter so much because I got another one I can use. Maybe I have 20 quarters, so I don't have to run around at all, right? I look at how high I flip the thing. I look at the, do I do it in front of the desk? Do I have something to catch that quarter if it does fall, right? There's a whole bunch of stuff that we try to do to make things better. Yes?
You might get nervous or anxious and wreck your whole day discussing that.
Yeah, you can get nervous or anxious and truly do wreck your day. And then things go downhill really fast. Then all of a sudden you find out that the number is way off.
Work more hours.
Pardon?
More hours. More Saturdays.
You could try to make it up by, that's basically gaming the system at that point and saying, okay, well, I can't get my work done, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to work overtime. And obviously that means you're also not going to charge the company for it, right? You're an ethical person, right? It's fine. You made the mistake. Okay? But our behavior changes drastically the minute we make an estimate that's too short. Why not just go back and say, hey, that estimate's wrong. I didn't account for this, I didn't account for that, I didn't account for that. Why would you do that? Why didn't that subject come up?
Our ego.
Is it your ego only? I mean, it could be ego.
But a client has an expectation set, and they're more painful to lose than pay the same amount.
So the client is a problem, your boss is a problem. It's that what happens around you again. You're in a no-win situation. You can't go. You're going to end up missing the time. You have to do efficiencies. Otherwise, you're going to end up with the shame coming back on you, right? And that's a huge, huge problem. So what do you do next time? You now up it. Hey, I get that test done in an hour. So we got a time that is probably somewhere around 1.5 to 3 minutes, and I'm going to go and up my estimate, say, say it's going to take an hour to do it. Now what happens whenever I say, I now have an hour to do this task? No, it actually takes longer than that. It actually takes longer than an hour. Because what you do is, there you go. You don't get to it right away, right? You start doing emails, you go out to coffee, your boss comes in, because your boss knows it's going to take an hour to flip a quarter 20 times, right? Start asking you to do other things. And what actually happens is you miss it. You actually miss it more. Because you don't have the pressure. When you had that 60% number, it was, oh my God, I got to really get to this thing. You're coming up with working overtime and doing all this stuff to put that burden back on you. The minute you end up with this great big huge amount of time, no problem. The hour comes and goes because it's not important to you anymore. And that hour, all of a sudden you look down, it's an hour and 5 minutes. Forgot again, right? Too many other things that come into effect. So all of a sudden, the number you are making, the estimate you're making, changes your behavior all over the map. If you have to do something, and this is really true, there's a thing called the student syndrome. Has anybody heard of that? Okay. The student syndrome is not fake. It's, I have a quarter, and I'm going to a school for a term. I'll get quarter because the quarters in here. I have a term, and I have a term paper due. When do you start that term paper? You come up with the idea on the second week, I think I'm going to do something about this, and then somewhere in the middle, around midterms, you have kind of a general outline, you have some of your sources done, right? Everybody's done that. And then somewhere, maybe 2 weeks before it's due, you actually start writing it, and then you get it done a day early, right? Because you had all that time. That's what you do, right? No, you don't. You wait until like the last week and go, oh my gosh, I got to get it done last week, right? And you're up all night the night before, and you go in with baggy eyes, and you haven't had sleep, and you give it to your professor, and it's got a bunch of spelling errors in it because you forgot to hit F7 and spell check it that one last time. So our behavior really is totally driven by the bounds in which we have to do this project. What's your manager going to do? Already broached part of this subject. If you have an hour to do this task, what's your manager naturally going to do? You have spare time. So on come the new tasks, right? Which just makes things worse because now all of a sudden you have other things to do. Would you please, new task moving? If you're early on a task, what does your manager do?
Gives you more to do the next time.
What?
Gives you more to do the next time.
Gives you more to do the next time, or expects you to actually cut that time. Oh, geez, you took 20% off of that time. I bet you could do that on the rest of the tasks you have to do. Great. What does it have an effect on you? These are both punitive, right? Regardless of what you do and how you work with this thing, you have this punitive action coming in from your boss. Either you now have to perform like that on every single task, which doesn't make sense because this is a statistical thing. Or you have all this other work to do, you start missing your task and things go to heck in a handbasket. Okay. Did we get those last numbers out? Okay, what were the last numbers? So when you guys estimated how long it would take to do this, what was the average of the last one?
The average was 3 minutes, 7 seconds.
Okay. So this task went from 88 seconds to do to 8 minutes and 7 seconds so far. Okay. Now, your morning, you now have a task. Every morning you're going to flip this quarter 20 times. You got to get it done. You got to get it done in the time that you estimate. I don't care what that number is you estimate. You've already given me an idea of what you're thinking. But now I'm going to put some consequences behind this thing. If you don't get that task done in the time that you're allotted to do it, then it's going to affect your performance review, and it's going to turn around and affect your pay. Right? So there's some serious consequences here. So you've given me one estimate of how long I do this. If I raise the ante on this thing, are you going to give me a different number? So think about that, write it down, and let's do the same thing. This is the last time we're going to do it. Okay, Susan, take your time, because I want you're part of the audience too, and I want you to kind of hear this next slide. I usually try to put a soft slide right behind where the handiness. This is I think this is relatively important. Some people may not have seen this model before. What is it? I've talked about the interruptions to your boss, right? I pick on your boss a lot, because your boss is a big problem, okay? It's that attitude that comes down, it's the culture. What is the problem with your boss doing interruptions and making you work on multiple things at a time? Okay? I'm always picking on multitasking. I hate it. Okay? I think it's a huge problem. Let's take an example. This is a very simple model. 3 tasks, 3 different projects. There's project A, project B, project C. These tasks all come up to you at one time that you need to do. They're all 2 weeks long, and they basically start on the same day. And it's not too far-fetched, because there's many times when things land on your desk and you have multiple things to do. And quite a few people come back and say, hey, I'm great at multitasking. I can go and time slice between these things, and I'll just do a wonderful job. Okay? Well, even if you could time slice and switch between these two as fast and efficiently as perfection, there's a problem. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say I've got 2 different scenarios, one with multitasking, one without. And what I'll do is I'll say, project A task is going to start, run for a week, and work on that for a week, then just switch to project B, work on it for a week, and project C, work on it for a week, then come back and finish everything off. Okay? When you do that, project A finishes 2 weeks late. Project B finishes 3 weeks late, and project C tasks finish 4 weeks late. Okay? I'm not playing with averages here, and you'll see this in a second. So the average time on the multitask is they are an average of 5 weeks late. Or sorry, they're done in 5 weeks. They're an average of 3 weeks late. If I turn around and actually work project A task gets done on time. That's pretty good. So project A wins out. Project B, that task, because it has to start at the end of this one, it finishes 2 weeks later. That's a week earlier than it did in the multitasking situation. Project C, it ends up finishing at the same time as it did before, 4 weeks later. But in the average, these are done in 4 weeks, 1 week earlier, they're 2 weeks late, 1 week earlier. Whenever I actually dedicate you to these tasks, they actually get done earlier, on the average. The trick is to try to not get them stacked up to one another and to make sure that they're properly prioritized. If I prioritize task C higher than task A and task A had to be done sooner, I'm in problem, right? So as long as I get this prioritization done and I don't multitask, things get done quicker. You guys should all know that, right? Because you're in Agile. What do? You sequester people, hopefully. I don't know far in. You sequester people in a room. You have the Scrum Master standing at the door with M16. No one's going to get in that room and screw up that iteration, right? You're not going to let anybody come in. You're not going to let people get taken away. The resources are dedicated. That's very rare. Okay? One of the tricks that I do in project recovery is dedicate the resources. And if you need some way to actually try to convince somebody that multitasking is bad, take a look at this. Okay? Have them take a look at this, excuse me. Do you guys hear people say that people are really good at multitasking? How many hear that? Okay. A couple of females in the crowd, one of the ones that I just love is whenever ladies come up to me and say, well, women are much better multitaskers than men. And I say to them, I say, that's a really sexist comment. And they go, yeah, man. I said, no, it's sexist against you. Because that's a really old phrase. It came back from, I was hearing that in the 60s. And what that phrase actually generated from was women were all homemakers back then, for the most part, right? And they multitask during the day. Joey's climbing up the bookshelf. I gotta get Joey off the bookshelf. I gotta bake cookies. The cookies can burn while I'm getting Joey away from the butcher knife, right? So multitasking all the time, but what they were really doing was putting the highest priority task first. So it's really not that females were great at multitasking. They understood the priorities of what they were doing at home. And I think that there's no difference at all between multitasking between the generations. And when that comment's made, I think it's a very sexist comment against females. Okay? And I have obviously no problem with saying that. Okay. Moving on just a little bit. How often do you guys want to be right? Do you like to be right 90% of the time? Everybody who likes to be right 90% of the time. Okay. How many people like to be right 50% of the time? Raise your hand. Oh, there's one person out there who's seen this presentation before, knows where I'm going, has figured it out from the presentation, that says, yes, I want to be right 50% of the time. Our psychology, what we have been told time and time again is you have to be right, right? But what we just get through talking about here is slightly different. So if I have a task, I've done it 3 times, and these are the hours it's taken me to do this. 12 hours, 7 hours, 11 hours. I did it 3 times in a row. What estimate am I going to give for doing that task? What duration? Think about it just a second. Let's just be show of hands. How many people would say 7 hours or less? 8 hours? 9 hours? 10 hours? Here, don't keep your hands up because I want to get kind of a count here. Okay? I better write that in. It's all very short. Okay? That was 10. 11 hours. And 12 hours or greater. 12 hours or greater. I think that's okay. Okay, so what did you just do in this process? Okay? The average of that is 10 hours. That was actually the lowest number that anybody said anything. Yeah, I could say 10 hours, but that was the average. You've done this enough times, so you have a little bit of an idea that I can do it in 7 hours, and I can probably get some efficiencies out of this thing, and there's probably something in the 10 and 11, the 12 and 11 that weren't quite right. So let's do 10 hours. I'm right down the middle. Half the time I'm right, half the time I'll be wrong. That's what you really need to be doing.
You'd be wrong 2 out of the 3 times if you said 10. Might be the average
So the statement was, I'd be wrong 2 out of the 3 times.
Yeah, if you're wrong on the 12 and the 11, you'd be right on the 7.
If I had another time up here that was 8, then you could change your mind. Okay? But I'm not going to, at some point, because I chose an odd number, you're always going to be off one way or the other, right? So really, I mean, you really should be picking 10. I hate that you kissed me. Somehow I did it 7. Right? There's got to be some efficiencies there. There's got to be maybe some other thing that I was doing in the 11 and 12. Maybe I need to lock the doors of my boss. Just going to perform something, right? And I'm going to talk about that in just a little bit. Okay? I'm going to skip that one because Did you get numbers on that last one, Susan?
Yeah, but it doesn't look right.
Oh, Microsoft Excel helped you out?
Yeah, I think it might.
Okay. So, depending on what this number is, we're going to do that one or not. I'll just skip by. Probably, yeah. So, Excel's going to do So Microsoft Excel is giving us a hard time back there at doing its own format and changing numbers from hours and minutes to minutes and hours and that sort of thing. So I can't get a good number without trying to figure out what's actually wrong with the format. But we have taken an expert view of this, and we said, yeah, it looks like it came up about another 50 to 75%. So it had gone from 88 seconds to do it. Your next estimate was 3 minutes and 7 seconds, and the estimate after that, we're going to say went up about 50% above that, so that'd be about 4 hours, or 4 minutes, 4 hours. 4 minutes and about 30 seconds. Okay.
Well, your average is still calculating out at 4 minutes 40. So, not bad.
Oh, okay. So we didn't do too bad. Okay. And so it's the min and the max that were off. There was somebody out there who were taking out the real outlier, which is the one person who said it would take him 8 hours to do it. There's one in every crowd. Okay. But the point is this number, as the consequences get stronger and stronger and stronger, all of a sudden get larger and larger and larger. This exercise, we're not going to write this thing down. Just think about it, because this is going to affect that number even more, and that is, if you hit this number, if you're inside this number every single day for 2 weeks, we double your paycheck. If you miss one day, we take your paycheck away. Okay? That also makes the number even get bigger. And what's happening? Whenever I'm putting these consequences down here, what is happening?
But you're reducing efficiency.
Well, yeah, but there's another thing. Psychologically, what I'm doing to you is I am turning this thing in your mind to a quote. Right? The more and more I go down this, and this one most definitely, it's saying the consequences of failure are so high, you are telling me you are going to have it done in that length of time. And so you keep making this number bigger so that you are providing a quote that nothing can go wrong. Of course, with the student syndrome, something probably will. So the whole psychology inside of an organization is turning around, and they're asking for estimates, but everything they do on top of that is making you, they treat it like a quote, then they start making you think about it as a quote, because if you miss it, you're in trouble. Okay? So what is happening? If you look, and if everything were working just perfectly, and somehow I'm going to have to make it so that we can actually do this live, okay? If you look at what actually, the time it takes for people to do these estimates, you come out with a, what's this called, beta distribution? A general normal distribution with the bottom and middle line. It's called beta distribution. Okay, that it takes X amount of time, and there's always these outliers that sit out here. Where you really should be estimating is saying, okay, well, half the time I'm above this and half the time I'm below that line. But instead what we do is we pick a number that we have something closer to an 80% chance of making it. And we pretty much kind of see that, okay, as you go through these estimates, because what happens when you do that is the length of time you're estimating doubles. Now, it took 88 seconds to do this, plus some setup and that sort of thing. The second estimate you came up with about 3 minutes, and on the next estimate you came up with about 4 minutes and 50 seconds. So things are getting bigger, and it's about 50% bigger. It would be, actually in this case, you're right now estimating out at that level. Okay? Whenever I take all the presentations I've done in the past, and I go and calculate that all out, that distribution curve comes just a little bit shy of that line, okay, of what the estimates are. Okay? And I can't do that here. It's too difficult because what I actually have to do that is to know, if you notice there's a little group number, and I can actually tell which group you're in. So whenever I get back to my office, I actually go and have another trusted assistant who I'm married to actually key those back in so I can get those actual numbers. Okay? But when you start estimating out here, what happens to the entire project? The entire project is long. It's huge. And you guys in the Agile community, you tend to start stripping this stuff out because of the iterations. But in regular projects, that's what happens. There was a gentleman I was talking to earlier, talking about how the customer kept coming back and saying, "But that's too much, I want you to trim it down, I want you to trim it down." That's because the customer is understanding that this is what is really being done. Is people are padding their estimates and they're trying to build the estimates up like that, so they want you to strip that out. If you're turning around, you're running this project as an Agile project, you probably already have stripped it out. You're going to have to do a lot of education to your customer to make them understand that that's what you're really trying to do. Okay? So it's further sales and education to your customer. So what do? Well, one is you get everybody on the same estimation process. You get people to understand that I'm going to hit this thing half the time, I'm not going to hit it another half the time. In your scrums, when you actually have an Agile iteration that you're running, do you always finish all the tasks that you have assigned in that iteration? Is it good if you do? No, it's not. Because it means you're not pushing, right? That's one of the real principles inside there. Okay? That's not used in the rest of the world. In Agile, it is used. You really should be running over time. Hey, I'm sorry, I couldn't get this done. I couldn't get this done. Failure is a positive option. It means you're really pushing. There's somebody, gosh, I just listened to him the other day. Now, I'm not going to come up with his name. It left. I had it earlier. That basically says, in any organization, if you don't have some failure quota that your people are trying to hit, then they're not being innovative, they're not driving forward. They're actually a liability to your organization. You want them to fail. Management can't handle that. I wouldn't be because I'm doing a
You
manager.
should overplan or what?
Pardon?
You mean that you should overplan? Like,
Not necessarily overplan, be aggressive. Right? If you don't, just like in a scrum, you say, hey, I'm going to do this, this is what I'm going to achieve. If I don't miss that and have a few things fall off the plate, yeah, I'm going to get it done. Then really you're just sandbagging and you're saying, oh, I'll just tell them I can do this, and then I can kind of relax and that sort of thing. If I start having too much spare time, what do? I start throwing in frills, I start putting in things that the customer doesn't necessarily want and all that. That is really, really the joy of Agile. So you want to get people educated on a single system and get the whole organization thinking that way. You got to stop interruptions. I'm speaking to the choir here because this is exactly what you do in an Agile environment. Provide fire cover. Keep people away from the team. Determine priority and enforce it. Right? This is all stuff that you guys do. I'm truly speaking to the choir. You have to dedicate people to their tasks. The environment. Co-locate the team if at all possible. I was talking to somebody and they said it's really tough because we have our people all over the place in different countries and different, that is tough because the biggest problem is communication. If you get people together, they're less distracted, they communicate better, and they can see what's happening. They can talk to one another. I go into a lot of companies, classical project management, not Agile at all. And what they do is they say, well, it costs too much to move the project team and co-locate them in the same area together. Really? So what do you do? Oh, well, I deal with their functional managers. So I've got the project team is scattered across 3 or 4 different buildings on 5 or 6 different floors. And well, where was the customer? Oh, well, they're over there. They're on the other side of the river. Okay, it doesn't actually sound like it. They're on the other side of the river. Well, wait a minute. How are these guys communicating? And by the way, do you realize how much you're paying me to come in and fix this thing? And you're telling me that the move of getting all these people co-located with the customer was too expensive? You're $500,000 over budget. You're bringing me in here. I'm telling you it's going to take you an additional 6 months to do it. That's going to be about $1.5 million more to do it. And then, I'm going to the bank all the time. I am cashing your checks. Okay? You weren't planning on doing this thing. And you're telling me co-locating people is too expensive. And I just kind of get a funny stare back. You got to enforce, both project manager and scrum master have to enforce that an estimate's an estimate. Every single company I go into, an estimate's a quote. And they get really upset. And of course, the environment turns around and stops the interaction. Our attitudes, both the managers and the teams, everyone is biased based on the consequences of missing our estimates. Okay? We just saw that. I just took you guys through that whole process. Right? So you are very biased about how you actually make those estimates. Whatever that consequence is, you're going to bias your numbers. We need to take that away. People shouldn't be putting in pad, because if they put in pad, then bosses turn around and use it to go get their own things done so they can please the CIO, the COO, the CFO, and we're wasting time. We got to quit the attitude, our attitude, if I finish on time, I've done my job. I walk into an organization and say, you had a week and a half to do the functional spec. You think you're going to finish it early? Hey, I told you it's going to take me 8 days. It's going to take me 8 days. As long as I hit that 8 days, I'm fine. No, it's not. You need to try to get it done earlier if at all possible. And if you can't get it done earlier, let's talk about what actually made it happen so that it was later. Maybe we can adjust it, maybe not. Right? There's certain types of variation we can't do anything about. When you're flipping those orders, the height you flip the order, it's not worth trying to fine-tune that. It's worth trying to keep it from falling on the floor, right? So you can't have people who just have the attitude that if they hit their estimate, they're okay. You want to get people into this attitude of I need to finish earlier. We have to stop encouraging multitasking. I don't know how many times I've said that throughout here, but we need to do that. The other one is cost accounting. What do we do whenever somebody is idle? We have a real problem with that. They have to be billable. I go into tons of companies where people have to be 90% billable. Well, how do you get training done if you're 90% billable? You're going to have some level of training to get people up to speed with the types of things they have to do. I don't want to have somebody working on some busy work to keep them productive monetarily, and then find out that they're not working on some other item that is truly higher priority. And what ends up happening is people end up working on items that are out of sync priority-wise, so that they can actually show that they're productive on the billing system. I'd rather have them sitting, twiddling their thumbs, and not doing something, waiting for that critical task to come in, and they're ready to work that critical task. Okay, does this really work? Again, preaching to the choir here, and I apologize, this is a general presentation. Agile does this. It does a huge majority of this. Superior scope alignment, it keeps teams dedicated, short horizons estimates, make it so your estimates are a lot more real, and you get immediate feedback. Was I too aggressive? Was I not aggressive enough? So you can kind of tune how you're looking at things and whether you're actually doing the right kind of slicing and dicing of the task and understanding what it actually takes. And also, estimates are done by the people who are doing them. I can't count the number of companies I go into where managers do the estimates for the employees. Not a good idea. How many of you have heard of critical chain? Okay? So critical chain does an immense amount of this. Critical chain really focuses on, it's a waterfall style project management methodology, and it focuses on a resource level critical path. So most products, like Microsoft Project, okay, puts together a critical path and says, here's the things you have to do. But it doesn't take into consideration resource constraints. So the critical chain is taking a look at the critical path and then figuring out the resource constraints to go with it. They have a very strong estimation process, and they basically go back to that 50% rule and say everybody must adhere to the 50% rule. In projects, when you do run them with that rigor, do finish about 25% faster on the average. It's a very, very good process. It also follows the same type of things of teams being dedicated to their task, and the people who do the work have to do the estimates. It's a very, very self-empowered, dynamic team. We have to have the types of resources that can work that type of task. So, if we have these tools and we understand this, I hate to tell you this, I know you probably think I'm a genius, but I didn't come up with all this stuff. I just can't, I've done a fair amount of reading. Okay? Why do we still have problems? It's people. You still have a whole bunch of people who have to assimilate this. If you're in a company that does Agile, and I usually pick out critical chain, but I'll pick it on Agile in this case. If you're in a company and the company says, hey, I'm going to run Agile. In fact, I noticed that this is an interesting point. Very few of you were actually inside an organization as an IT subset inside that organization. Because most organizations that are building airplanes or selling insurance or whatever just cannot get their heads around Agile at all. They don't understand that iterative process. And upper management says, you're doing what? And things start to fall apart. If you're in your own company, so you have that closed system, you can actually keep Agile running very, very efficiently. But what happens is they bring people in to a company, they go through the 6 to 9 month training on Agile, everyone's assimilated into the Agile way of doing things. Generally from the upper echelons of the company all the way down. Everybody's trained. What happens to the training department? To teach people Agile. They disappear. New people come on board, and if they come on board as individual contributors, then the Agile team kind of takes them in and kind of trains them and gets them going with that general philosophy, and for the most part, things are okay. But the minute you start managers who aren't familiar with Agile, because they have the ability to tell people to go a different direction, then you start losing that whole drive, and things start reverting back to, no, it's not going to be Agile. And it's a real big problem with critical chain, because critical chain actually has this whole philosophy of you're right half the time, you're wrong half the time. There's a lot of people who just can't handle that. Okay? They want to be right 90% of the time. Whoops. Okay. There we go. Okay, so I mentioned that I do project recovery. How would I go and take this type of stuff and actually put it into a recovery? I walk into a project that's all screwed up. How do I take this type of thing and actually put it into place? Well, it's simple. I take portions of it and I implement things. So run superior fire cover. I literally tell the customer, I tell executive management, you are not talking to my team. If you want to talk to my team, you come to me. And I funnel absolutely everything through me. It completely frustrates everybody. And then before too long, I start letting the customer talk to the people on the team. I keep executive management out of it. I never let them talk to the team. Okay? Because that's how all of a sudden start getting people hijacked and off on different tasks. I let the customer come back in after I give them a good lecture and understand that people are going to adhere to scope. And if new scope comes in, we're going to turn around and reprioritize and either do something Agile-esque or we're going to do a good, strong change management.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, like, you developers, they estimate, how do you report, like, the team lead to your manager? Like, for example, if I would be team lead, and my guy is telling we are doing that, but it's just estimation. What should I tell to my manager? What my manager to have to tell to their manager? How do they plan? Do they plan on this?
Okay, so are you talking about in an Agile sense, or are you talking about non-Agile? Okay, so in an Agile sense, I'm missing because your people, I guess I'm missing the situation, how it can occur. Because the reason I asked that is because that sounded really a lot like a classical project management problem, okay? Because once you're in an agile situation, the work that's being assigned to that task, to that iteration, is generally accepted by the rest of the organization. It's, okay, these guys know what they're doing, and keep their hands away from it. And the scrum master is sitting in between running the fighter car. So the boss, the functional manager, never gets involved. Okay? So I'm not exactly sure your question.
No, my point was like if you're just writing 50% of the time, you're not like, because what I was telling, like, you should be doing what we have estimated almost. So all the thing should be like not being able to do everything like maybe 100%, maybe 80%, 70%, whatever.
Right.
And then my point is how do you like plan in real organization when you have to do something and you have a client that's waiting for your estimation. Do you go to client and say, oh, my estimation was wrong, and then like,
Okay, so the way I do it in Agile, okay, is I go to the customer, I explain to them what Agile is and why we're going down the Agile route. And I usually let the first 1 or 2 iterations go through before I try to commit to something. Because what happens in those first 2 iterations or so is all of a sudden they start seeing, well, you know, that's not really what I want. I want something that looks more like this. Okay? And so they actually see the value of moving things around. And then I can go back to them and say, how can I tell you how long it's going to take when you don't know what you want? Right? Is that answering your question?
yeah, almost. But my customer, I want to have the product like in 2 months or 3 months. That's it. Yeah, I cannot wait that people are telling me.
And I have no problem telling them that they'll get a product. No such a product in 2 to 3 months. No problem. What is it you exactly want?
Okay, meaning that I should.
Okay.
adapt
And
my-
they can't tell me exactly what they want. Well, okay, then you'll get a product. But we'll go through this process of discovery together, because as you go down through this, you're going to find out you want something just a little bit this way, a little bit that way. We'll accommodate that. If you'd like, I'll tell you exactly what I'm going to deliver in 2 months, but you may not like it. So which do you want? Do you want me to tell you what you're going to get in 2 months? Or are we going to walk in this path together and get to some point? And so far, I haven't had problems with actually getting people to go down that route. Okay. Other things that I do is I dedicate people to their tasks. That's another big one. I also co-locate the team. That's a very, very big advantage in these things, and I use this. I also cheat. I do a lot of off-site stuff, and so I literally take the entire team and I move them off to Israel or Singapore or whatever. Their boss can't let them. They're dedicated to the task. They also want to get home. Right? There's a huge incentive. And the project gets done really fast. Okay. I also, one of the things I do, and I don't cut off the slide, is I also quite often will take their estimates and cut them in half. Okay. I will literally take their estimates, cut them in half, don't tell them I do it, and then I also don't penalize them when they miss their estimates. Okay, but I keep the pressure on them that way, and then all of a sudden they start hitting the times. I have a great story that takes about 10 minutes to tell you about somebody who finally noticed that I was cutting their times in half. And of course, there are times when it's quadruple what they used to before. Okay, so thank you very much for showing up. I hope that this addressed some stuff. I know there's one person probably here that I didn't address exactly what they want to hear. I hope. I don't know if you mentioned this. I do have a book that I wrote called Rescue the Problem Project. It's due out in March. And if you guys want, we can drop your business cards in a bowl. There's a bowl over there, and we can draw, and I can send you a book in March, April, whenever it finally goes out. You guys interested? You want to do that? I can send a bowl around and do that.
Todd, what we can do,
So you can get all my contact details out of there. If you have questions, please contact me. I have no problem spending time with you.
I have a question about my special field.
Okay.
My company works in banks, and they want a free way they need to like kind of contact context between different suppliers. And they say, okay, we have this software to do, so give us estimates, right, or your cost, people, length of time, and do it.
So to kind of replay, so what's happening here is this gentleman has a situation where he is up against other people who are bidding, a smaller company. He's up against companies like IBM and Accenture who are bidding. And they're going up against the company wants a competitive bid, so you have to come in with an estimate to come back with a competitive bid. Okay? To my knowledge, I don't know a whole heck of a lot of agile companies that come back and do that. Okay? And my guess, because I've bid against IBM 100 times. I've actually been on both sides of the table on that one, and they have one thing that they do every single time. And then they say, oh, I'll give you this, 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 and this. And this, it's going to cost you that much money. And the customer comes back and says, halfway through, three-quarters of the way through, or even at the end of the project, says, well, I really need to do this and this. Why did you give me that? I don't want that, I want this. The change order comes in immediately, and the price goes up because they change order the debt out of the customer.
I know that. I know that also because I was working for IBM before.
Yeah.
So that the point is that you have to make numbers. So the bank managers, customers, they need numbers. For giving they numbers to upper level manager, they don't know even the name of the company.
And so you need to get
numbers of a big return project.
So you need to get people who are familiar with work like that, or have done that exact same thing before, to start saying if they want to have this sort of thing, this is how long it's going to take. So I worked in the semiconductor industry.
We are doing that. We are doing the classical estimates, and then with that estimate that are useful for commercial, then we throw it out and we start with our kind of agile. But it's not agile because you are saying to the customers something that you are not sure that you can do. So this is the point.
Do you think that IBM and Accenture are saying that they can do what they're saying they can do? No, they can't. So they're no different than you, right? The customer's asking them to do something, and an IBM and Accenture are saying, either that's stupid, or how the heck are we going to do that? And they come up with a number, and then through the management process, they beat the customer up to get whatever money they have to get out of it. Or they start swapping things out. Well, if you want to have that, then I'm going to take this feature out and this feature in. Okay?
But they have